Computer. There we go.
We are in progress.
Yeah, I was
So,
actually all turned around with the time because I used to live in Saskatchewan, and in Saskatchewan they never changed the time. So I was used to and my sister is still there. So now that I'm 3 hours or 2 or 3 hours different rather than two, and then but everywhere else is fine because we're all in lockstep. But not if you're from Saskatchewan.
yeah, Indiana used to be like it never changed the time. So sometimes Illinois and Chicago would be at the same time as Indiana, but then sometimes it wouldn't. So, and
So you are now
Canada
in a
has
different
more.
time than other time?
What's that now?
You are in a different time schedule now?
We have daylight savings time ended.
Mhm.
Okay.
We had that. And don't you guys have some type of Central European savings
Yeah,
time or
yeah,
something?
yeah. In winter it's changing, and in summer it's changing 1 hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do an hour. Ours ended the first part of November.
But yeah, I think in this time we changed this as well.
Yeah, they're
And they
trying
had,
to do away with it.
yes. And there's people I used to be on a lot of calls in India, and they have another Indian Central Time. They have a savings time too over there.
Yeah, we have one province on the far eastern coast where it's a half hour different than
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, I think I've heard about that. Yeah,
Yeah, so kind of odd.
and then also the Eastern Canadian people, because if you go to New York City or Maine or something like that, that's Eastern Standard Time, but there's an Atlantic time.
Yep,
That's 1 hour beyond that.
yep. In Newfoundland, half an hour beyond that 1 hour.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, the people there. I don't know. I used to be on phone calls with them. I think it was, but they were talking about it was a nice day in early spring. It was in the 80s. And then one day, an iceberg showed up in the bay.
Yeah,
The temperature dropped down to the 60s.
amazing.
So, what have you guys been shooting?
For me, not too much.
I mean,
I've I've been working editing a lot, but I didn't shoot too much.
did it did it hinder your shooting because of cold weather, or do you
Yeah,
have?
maybe, but yeah, I was
Does
busy
me.
as well with other things, so then yeah, and I changed from photo club, so it's different as well
Mm.
because I hadn't too much fun in this club, so I spoke to another guy from that I know, and he said, "Well, my club is good." So actually, he invited me for a exhibition, and I was there, and then talked to some people in that club, and I saw some photos, and then I they invited me to go to their club
Oh,
one time,
wonderful.
so I was there, and well, it was just a difference of the sun and the moon.
Yeah,
Because in my club, they say everything is good and they don't let you speak. So it was easy to make a decision that I go to another one. And you had some problems steady with your club, you told in some lines.
oh no, the only problem our club is great. Everybody very friendly, very cooperative. Uh, the probably I think what most photo clubs have a problem with are there are too many old people.
Mm.
We need to get younger people. We have a few younger people coming in, but
Yeah.
we need more. Um, but it could be that maybe the younger people just that wouldn't be their thing. It's just sort of like you would be as you get older, you become more interested in stuff old people used to be interested in, type of thing.
Mhm.
So that could be what that's all about. But our biggest problem right now is because of the Doge cuts with the government cuts with spending and things like that. All the libraries in the United States have cut their budgets. So we had our meeting area in the Monroe County Public Library. We had meetings from 7 to 9, 2 or 3 times a week. And now they're closing the libraries at 7 p.m.
Oh gosh.
So we don't have a good place for everybody to meet where you can have, because we used to have, it was a big screen TV in a room, and we had a device called the Owl. I don't know if you know what an owl is or not, but it sits in the middle of the room and it will zero in on people talking. Like you put a table around the owl in a ring, and it just kind of follows everybody as they speak. It's really cool. So that was very handy for us to use. But now we don't have that, so we need to figure out. One of those owls are like $1,500 too. So, but that's the only problem with our group. But I think photo clubs are great if you get in the right club. I've heard horror stories about some clubs where people won't share information. They're jealous about.
Yeah.
You don't want anybody. Nobody wants to know what camera settings you use and things like that.
They don't like critics sometimes. And
Yeah.
the other thing in my old club was that everything was on the screen. And this new club that I have, everything is printed. So you need to go there with a print, and then they talk about your print, and then they go quite deep. So if they go quite deep, that is what I want. Even if it's bad critics, I'm better having bad critics than hear that everything is good. Huh?
Yeah, I've run 2 groups in our club, one for history of photography and one for photographic critique. And they're both Zoom, so we can't share the photographs.
Mhm.
Although in our club, sometimes we'll frequently have prints for people to peruse over and take a look at. And we also have guests often bring photos. Some prominent photographers come up and bring us stuff to look at. So that's always fun. So it's a big difference between holding a print in your hands and seeing it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So
the
I think
last club I was in, you'd have to show up with a couple of prints for critique. And that was great. And it forced me to go into a little bit more exploration of printing, which was, and then, deciding, well, I'd really like to see this much larger and on a piece of paper. So that's a very different experience than on a big monitor.
Yeah. And we got
in the new club that I have, they have a kind of a screen, and every photo is on the screen. So you have a large screen with 20 photos. And then at the end of the evening, they're going to make a choice of the photo of the month. So you have to put up your hand and say, well, this one is for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have like pictures. I don't know, it's gonna be out of focus.
Nice.
Well, yeah, it's all blurred.
Yeah, so there's a spider. There's a spider in there somewhere. Anyway, you can see about how big this print is.
Yeah.
Frame print. So I don't know where to put them.
But actually, it's a new start for me, because now I have to work. I don't print too much, so it's good for me.
Yeah. Do you print with your own printer, or do you take them to a service to print?
I think I have to go to a lab because I have a printer of $100, so that is not printing very well, I think.
Yeah, I bought a printer a few months back, and I've been slowly moving into it a little bit, and I'm doing it more for anticipating printing photos as gifts for people and such. Because I don't have a lot of room on my walls to put stuff up, but I've been enjoying it. It's it's a whole other level of challenge, and some of the printers now have larger ink reservoirs, so you're not kind of always paying like $50 every 6 pictures,
Right.
because it's going through a cleaning cycle. So it's been fun to explore, but I've now had to get into a color spider and get into the calibration and all the rest of it. So it's there's a technical stream to figure out in your workflow.
Yeah, I need to have a place for a printer.
Yeah.
How big are your prints? How big?
I think I can go 19 inches, I think, or 22, one of the two.
That's not
So
bad.
it's a fairly large format.
And the other thing is that my old club was not connected with other clubs. This
Mm,
one, the new one, is connected uh, with the country as well. So
right.
you have to, yeah, they are putting in photos, and then it's going to the department first of the country, and then it's going to the country. So you
Hmm.
have to,
It's interesting.
yeah, you have to have a certain level to come through.
So it's like juried into a certain
Yeah,
pool,
yeah.
right? Yeah, that's getting darn
It's
serious.
working as well as I think because yeah, you go to look at carefully at someone else's work.
Yeah. Going back to your point, Teddy, about like, sometimes you have older people in these kinds of clubs. That's the same kind of experience that happens with things like astronomy, where, it's
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
I'll bet.
an ongoing challenge. And some of it is to do with, by the time in life where people can afford the gear,
Mhm.
they're a little bit on, but it's always been interesting. Like there are a lot of people that you can encounter just out photographing. So, the picture I shared last week with the two photographers, the street photographer, like it regularly is happening to me where I'm running into photographers in the street or at events. I was at a show, oh, maybe a month ago now, and like sometimes there's usually a few photographers in the show, including myself, but in this particular one, it was just a frenzy of these young 20-year-olds that, hopping around on stage with cameras, and they were doing all kinds of flash effects. So, they had like little cardboard cards on top of their flash to get a little bit of a bounce. They were flashing and twisting to get a little bit of a twirl. Like and it was just so much fun to watch them. And so in the course of things, I end up in conversation with people who are, just kind of out and shooting, and I find that a lot of fun. I even I bought a zine from one guy who,
Oh
so he
yeah.
he is taking his pictures and putting them in, and they're fine. But it's just, like I think that there are many opportunities sometimes, to just kind of find photographers in situ, I suppose, out and about. I think some people are fairly solitary, and so they're loners out. If you go to any
Yeah,
kind of event, you can usually spot some people off in the corners taking pictures. But it's always lovely when you end up in conversations with those folks,
yeah,
I find.
yeah. When you go to a new club, you have 25 or 30 people you don't know as well, eh? So
Yeah,
you have to get connection with them. So you need to work on that as well.
yeah,
And you have completely different levels of what they're trying to do. Like
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
a lot of people in my club are birders. I'd say
Mm,
half the people are birders. So that's fine. I enjoy birding photography and stuff like that. So because there's a lot of technical stuff that I find very interesting. But then there are also people who do things like create Christmas cards,
yeah,
do collages and things like that, where I think is like, I'm not really interested in that. I can sort of help them with composition and things like that. But and then I'm not critical of them, but there's
yeah.
that. And those people are frustrated because their stuff never ends up in juried exhibits
Hmm.
because nobody ever accepts that kind of thing. Like pictures of their own kids with Harry Potter glasses on and stuff like that. That's just not what jurors are wanting to see.
Yeah.
but it depends as well on the how the club is working as well. Here they put photos on a board, maybe 20, and you talk about everybody's photo first. Maybe there was a leader as well that he, when there was not talking too much, he said, "Well, what do you think of the car? What do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? Well, is there an action or is there no action? Are there layers and things like that?" And then you don't know from who is the photo.
Oh,
That's good as well, I think,
Hmm.
because then the people are not talking to the mouth of the photographer. Uh,
Yeah.
And then after that, they started with the photographer, and they asked him if he could do something with the critics, or he agreed or not agreed, and then everybody else is giving his opinion as well. So you're talking maybe 10 or 15 minutes about one photo, or or something like that, then in the end you have an opinion of what he has made and how he made it and wherefore he has done it. Uh, and in the end, there's one photo is going to the website. So one is chosen for the photo of the month. So in the other club, everybody sent in 5 or 6 pictures, and every photo was on the web. So that's the difference, huh?
Everyone gets a prize.
Yeah. In our club, it would be hard to make it anonymous because almost everybody would be able to recognize somebody else's work.
Yeah. If you're longer there, then you recognize this.
Which actually, that's one of the questions I was going to ask today had to do with that. Like critique. Well, like, can I have my critique meetings? People are here on Zoom and they'll show their photos. And what I always, my kind of my rules are to explain as much as you can about the photo. You know, whatever you want to talk, you can talk about the technical details, what you were shooting for, blah, blah, blah. Just whatever information you can give. And then the people that participate, the idea would be to not give them like a keeper or a free flight type of thing. Not, there's never going to be a thumbs up or thumbs down thing, but to say something good about the photo first, no matter what it is, and then ask questions or make suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it. You don't say, well, you know, at the end of this, though, this photo really sucks. No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's where, and this is something, and that's what we've been doing. And I've recently listened to a podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, but a photographer that's being interviewed, and he was talking about he never likes to participate in critiques online because he thinks it's best. He says it's fine to do that, but he can't really do it well. It's best to be engaged in a conversation with the photographer themselves as opposed to online. And I agree with that. I think that's a great way to do it because then people get a chance for this back and forth with the photographer.
No.
And
Actually, there's some difference between critiques and feedback, but for me it's the same, but not for everybody.
yeah.
You know, and I sometimes make the distinction between, you know, there's critique and then there's opinion. And, you know, it's fine if someone, you know, if I don't like a picture, it's fine, I don't like it. But if I'm giving a critique, I kind of feel responsible to go into that a little bit in terms of, you know, I do generally want to maybe start in a way, there's something that I might find that works in an image. But if I have a problem with it, I'm going to try to do it not just like I dislike your picture. I mean, it's fine if I do. I probably am not going to comment on those pictures generally if it's in an online form. But if I am going to critique it, I want to talk about, you know, its technical qualities, its compositional qualities, something about it that gives someone something to act upon rather than just saying, well, I don't like it. Because, you know, if you just say you don't like it, well, you're not giving them anything. You might as well just be quiet.
If they say they like it, it's a bad as well because
Well, exactly. If you just say, well, I like
Yeah.
your picture. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's not telling me anything to help me.
Great pick.
Yeah.
And I think the weekly and other critique groups that they work fine because that's the only way you can really do it, unless we were to have a Zoom meeting like this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like what I like this when you have text messages, things like that, that's episodic.
Yeah.
You have to wait until the next episode, you know, where you're actually conversing with somebody face to face. That's not episodic. It's much more natural.
Well, and over time you calibrate to the conversation too. Like, Jan, you're talking about the difference in this new club you're in. Over time, you know, you'll adjust how you are in conversation with that group because you're dynamically in the conversation with them. And you know that I think that, you know, it makes sense that there are some communities where you feel that it's more engaging or more involving, and other ones where it's just more procedural.
Yeah,
So,
you have to listen about your art, eh? When what your feeling is. If your feeling is not good, you better can go, I think.
yeah.
And with with critiques and conversations, another thing that came up somewhere else. I can't remember. I might have been another podcast I listened to. But so, say if you have an immediate interpretation of a photograph as a viewer, and this is what the interpretation is, that you can see the narrative of it and all that kind of stuff. There's a story there, but how much consideration should you be given or think about what might an alternate narrative be that maybe the photographer uh, actually had in mind when they took the photograph? Is that something the viewer should consider?
Well, that comes up a lot in relation to composition. I think I've seen that, and I've done it with. I can remember some pictures where I've responded, and I kind of say to someone, "Well, this is all well and good, but had you swung, had you taken a different point of view, had you framed it differently, it would be far something more. Like if you critique composition, you're suggesting a reframing, and sometimes." It's kind of funny because someone might say, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but then I would have fallen off the boat into the water had I tried to back up one more step.
No.
So we don't know the context of things and some of the constraints that lead to a photograph. It's similar to when, and I may have mentioned this before, when someone might say, well, you should have taken 30 shots of that and then picked the sharpest one. Well, there's many situations where you have one shot at it.
One opportunity.
Something is very fleeting and you're capturing an instant and that's it. And so to get feedback that, well, you should have, rotated around, taken 30 shots, popped about 6 flashes off. Yeah, maybe, but that's not what would have been possible in that circumstance. So going back to what you said earlier, it can be beneficial if people provide a little bit more context in terms of the context in which they were shooting and maybe something about what they were trying to do. At the same time, I respect the idea, and I mean, I rarely put descriptions into my shots. I'll just put a title that I think is either funny or evocative or something, or just a title. But I believe a photo should stand on its own. But the minute you engage with it, I think it is fine. I think, but sometimes a bit not misguided, but it might not be helpful to offer a critique about certain things because it just wasn't possible to do it differently. Though maybe you can go back and do it under different circumstances and have a little bit more kind of, I suppose, choices in mind when you make the decisions for the next shot.
For me, it's like you said, it's let the photo speak for itself, and maybe what I really usually don't consider the alternates. I mean, I might consider things, especially when I'm with a weekly. I'll say, well, if you were at a lower point of view or something like that, I'll make suggestions like that. And those are things I'll consider as alternates, but I'm not going to consider why this horizon was crooked because maybe he made it crooked on purpose. I'm not going to do that, unless it's a Dutch angle or something like that. That's one thing, but if it's just a little bit crooked, no, I'm not going to say, well, maybe he meant it to be that way. Forget that. Or if it's just too busy, I'm not going to consider. And this is what triggered me with that originally, with this original podcast I heard where somebody said, well, people frequently will say a photo is too busy. Well, maybe the photographer intended it to be that busy.
Yeah.
Again,
that's usually prompting me to click when something's really chaotic and busy. I want that.
Yeah. So, I think that's something. I don't think your instinct is, should that be part of the critique process? And I would say, in other words, you're going to use the photographic rule of wishful thinking.
Mm.
And I don't think there should be a rule of wishful thinking.
But I think we're always in a state with anything that, we're responding as viewing subjects. And in our response, we're creating a meaning or creating a sense of the experience of viewing that is from us as much as it is from the picture. And so I think it's very difficult not to interject some of your own framing, your own interpretations into things. And again, I think that's the nature of art, or the nature of any kind of response to a piece of material work like a photograph or a piece of writing a song. and people will see, hear, and have different emotional or logical reactions to what
Yeah,
they
and we
see.
all taking our with us our background.
Yeah,
So
and our
uh,
experience, our reference.
I
Well,
have
some,
seen last week, so I had a course, and then there was a teacher. He was a more artificial, a more art man than a photographer. And he took out my pictures, all pictures. You need to make a choice of 50 pictures of mine. And he took out all the pictures with movement and which are not so sharp. So he took out three or four because he is an artist and he has a profession of artistical things. So he has
Mhm.
to sell his vision on things. He said as well, uh, when I have to do a jury of a photographer's game, I first look at the intention of the photographer, and if his intention is not so what I think that in his written report, then he's not going through with me. So actually, you say, Jeff, or you told us that the photo is telling what it's telling, but in his case, it's not the case. He he looks at the background of the photographer, and if it's not straight with the series he showed him, then he refuses.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, and when I've talked to a few folks who, are like I'm an amateur photographer, but when I've spoken with photographers, and especially photographers who aspire to publishing their work and such, what becomes interesting is how they sometimes start thinking about, what is within the collection, what is within what they would show and what is not. And that discernment in turn, like, it's one thing to talk about intention when you're talking about one image, but when you're talking about a collection of images and what's brought into proximity and sequence within something that maybe even is entitled as a book or under some kind of name or sense of idea, there's a whole additional set of things happening there, I think, in terms of judgment, discernment,
Yeah.
um, and I think that kind of aspires to that's a direction that I think everyone could benefit from exploring. But it is interesting that I think that not everyone has to occupy that notion of creating an oeuvre of
Yeah.
work or creating a grand book. I think there's also a hook in photography that's very much about the gratification of having captured a moment that is meaningful to you, that kind of conveys to you something that you were hoping to get from that moment. And it's
Yeah.
possible that you aspire to put those together into something, a collection or other things, but that might not be where it begins and ends in terms of the quality or the engagement of why one photographs.
Mhm.
Teddy, you've a couple of times previously talked about Barth's idea of studium, and there is a way I think in which our initial, well, I think how people take an image as well as how people initially take up an image partakes of that notion of the studium in terms of what are the references, what are the kind of characteristics of landscape, what are the kinds of things we might associate with documentary and such, and then
birding.
yeah, birding, anything like that,
Mhm.
and then there are the ones that I guess maybe this is the punctum, but maybe not necessarily, but the things that kind of break through, and suddenly it's not just a landscape, and that could be a quality of the light. It could be suddenly you realize something that's within that kind of shifts your attention from to something that you would accept as this, but now it's something else, and that or the presence of something that emotionally hooks you in to an image. And you can look at 1,000 street photographs, and several of them will suddenly make you feel an emotion. Other ones, it's just kind of flipping through postcards, and it's kind of interesting to kind of figure out in your own work, like, well, or in terms of when you're walking down the street, why did that catch your eye? Why did you find curiosity in that assemblage of shadows or textures or something? And I think that I think the more you look at photography, as a genre, and look at some really good photographers out there, the more you develop that curiosity and sensitivity to those kinds of things that maybe catch a moment or catch a feeling, that I think can be really powerful in terms of just dwelling on and kind of trying to come and capture from different angles or different perspectives, different moments.
Yeah, to me, it's like I might, when I was walking around Cambridge, Massachusetts, so I had an idea of getting fall photos, River Charles, something along the River Charles, some of the architecture around there. Went to Harvard Yard, and walked around there. But I didn't have one specific thing in mind. But while I was shooting one thing, there would be something where I'd be like struggling. I'm thinking about, oh, I think I'll try this. When I'm doing that, then the next thing I know, there's something, it's almost like somebody whispering in my ear, hey, look over here, look at that window, look at the way the sun is hitting this.
Mhm.
And that's where, that to me, that's one of the best things about photography, when that inspiration occurs.
Yeah.
And that still, even then, when that happens, that doesn't mean it's going to be a fantastic photo. It's more likely to be a flop. But that process of creation is it's addictive.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and
when you,
it's lovely to be pulled into that process of seeing.
yeah,
Even if it doesn't result in a good photograph, that attempt at that or trying to get something, it in
yeah,
itself, I think, puts you in a slightly different place than if you just always focus on the result.
yeah. And then you also have the difference too, where like if I'm going to be close by to a place here, the IU campus, and I know exactly where I'm going to go, so I can zero in on something
Hmm.
over and over again. That's another way to do it. Um, but still, it's uh, and you're also taught, and that's where something a series would come in mind. A series like your stuff with movement and so forth, and you're talking about a sequence, like a close together sequence, like say maybe you take those pictures within a month. But I would say it would be equally valid, and but probably I don't think you would disagree. You could go back and look at all your photos from years before and still come up with a good series of like five
Hmm.
shots.
Hmm.
That might be 10 years apart, but they would
Yeah.
still be valid
Yeah,
as
yeah.
part of a series.
One
Yeah,
of the
if you
things
go
I
to your
was doing,
photos of 10,
oh,
of 10 years ago, you find some jewels in it, and you
yeah,
never have seen it.
yeah.
Why?
I go back and forth a bit because, like, in terms of what I end up putting up on Flickr, I'm trying to emphasize a little bit. Like, if a friend of mine who lives far away from me were to go to Flickr, they'd probably have some sense of what I'm up to in the last couple of weeks because I'm gonna show it there. But at the same time, in the last couple months, like, so for instance, you were talking about fall colors. I made a point of going back about 3 to 4 years, and I was looking at, okay, so what kind of pictures was I capturing a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And I pulled together some, collections of five from those years into something I was presenting now. And there are a couple of things that are nice about that. I start to realize the patterns of, this time of year, I'm often going after similar kinds of things because of the prompt with the change of the colors of the leaves and, the change of the season. It's very beautiful and very, there's transition there that you can capture. So it's lovely to go back and explore that, but you also have a different emotional distance or experience looking back at something you took 10 years ago than that you took last week or yesterday. And I think there's maybe an emotional detachment that allows you to be a little bit more critical or kind of careful, like, well, why would I bring this one forward? Whereas remembering, that you were doing this on a walk yesterday, that might be enough reason for you to put it forward. At least for me. I think if
Yeah.
it all depends on where an individual sets the level. But it's a lovely experience, I think, to go back and, so, what were we all shooting November 16th, 10 years ago?
Yeah,
Or,
Yeah,
in proximity to that, and then look at that in relation to what we're shooting today.
you know, you know your photos of yesterday, but the photos of 1 year ago,
Mhm.
you don't know you were there, but you don't know exactly what you've taken.
Yeah.
So,
You forget it and you actually come across your own picture as a viewer rather than as the photographer. And you have kind of misrecognition initially because you're not as intimate with it from, the time past as you are to something that I may have taken yesterday, for instance.
Mhm.
So now, sort of jumping to a different topic, I frequently use a term, the word value. And I will say things like, if you can remove this distracting object, bright line, bright circle in the upper right-hand corner of your photo, that would increase the photo's value. Or if you left it in there, that would decrease its value. However, value has a whole different meaning in art and photography in general as tonal value. So, like, what's the dynamic range, that kind of thing. So, what would be a good alternate term to say there's more? This photo was increased in value by whatever improvement was made, making brighter, darker, whatever it might be.
Value is a slippery word.
Yep.
I will say, because I was working on a picture from a concert that I was at on Friday night, and I was somewhat unhappy with. I like the picture for a lot of reasons, but I'm standing behind some guy, and there's his big head in the middle of where I wish it were not. And so I kind of was trying to think about how to work with that, and to me, the picture had more value if I had a clearer view through the stage. And I kind of experimented with, is there any way I could just remove that? And then I was thinking, well, but then if I'm removing this, it kind of pulls me away. I mean, this isn't my picture anymore, especially if I'm trying to substitute something in or move it around. It's something else now. But then what I discovered with this particular image, and I can show it later if you want, is I changed my sense of how I was framing it so that the component that was really a nuisance to what I was trying to visualize got repositioned because I figured out another way to present the whole image that made it kind of snap back together in something that I valued more. And this maybe pushes your topic a little bit, but I'm finding myself like for a while I was jumping to cropping really quickly to crop out stuff, because there's on the edge, there's something that's distracting and all of that. And I've really tried to stop myself so that maybe the last thing I do is a crop, because I realized, and I've gone back and looked at some other pictures, if I'm too quick to crop into what I think is interesting, I sometimes lose what was originally interesting to me when I took the image. And I should spend more time exploring and thinking about that before I kind of make a decision to suddenly just lose reference to it, in terms of post-production. So I think that value question has it does come back to what you see entirely in the frame, and what might be a distraction might actually need to be there because that's part of what was there, or visually it's just something that you need to get rid of for very good reasons, like because it's pulling your eye off the corner or other such things. So I do think it becomes a judgment call, but it's useful to kind of question that decision, I think, as you go and maybe revisit. Especially like on one of my cameras, I can kind of set it so that I zoom into a digital crop, and then it presents that to me. So if I'm shooting on a 28 millimeter lens, the camera would kind of present me with something that's, let's say, 50 millimeters in the viewfinder. And what I realize is that I probably shouldn't do that, because it'd be better for me to try to compose at 28 and get it right, and then work on it. Because I sometimes, if I'm just presented with a 50 millimeter view, I realize, oh, I don't like the picture for this, and then, oh, wait a minute, the 28's still there, and I can still see the whole. And so I find that for me, at least, it's better for me to judge my own sense of the image by pulling back a little bit and seeing the whole before going in and starting to do any removing things or trying to get rid of distractions and such.
No, I think you also have a difference between a documentary type of photograph or a fine art photograph.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that you have to say, well, this is going to be what was like, it looked like that in that club because this post was here and the glare off the wall or whatever. I mean, that'd be a more documentary type of thing. So, that's why you need to weigh that stuff. I would, in your case, when you're actually shooting it, I would try to go, if you had the time, have the option of both.
Mhm.
so you can I'm going to try to zoom in. I'm going to reduce the clutter, but then again, let's pull back and include it just to see how it works.
Yeah, and so I do that by repositioning. Like I move.
Mhm.
I move because I'm just shooting with I never shoot with a zoom in a setting like that. So I reposition myself from, let's say, close up to farther back, and then I can get different kinds of environment. Again, I think it's an interesting thing. It's very contextual, but I in terms of the sequence of things, I've started to put any kind of recropping of an image farther down the sequence. So I'm not going to try to resolve the crop first. I'll do the crop last or close to last, because then it keeps me looking at the frame that I shot
Yeah,
and
keep your
working with it.
priorities straight and is a more logical sequence of events, or else you get lost in stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And you have fixed lenses mostly, yeah.
mostly. I mean, I do have some zooms and I take them out from time to time, but 90% of the time I'm shooting with a prime lens.
So actually, you are zooming with your feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. About value that you asked, but there are so much things to valorize in a photo. You can valorize light, you can valorize composition, you can. Sometimes you say it's almost a 10, and only when you make it better with this thing, maybe take out some points, or then it's a 10.
Hmm.
Then it's easy because it's only one little thing in the photograph. But when yeah, Robert Jeff is talking about his 28 millimeters, I often make this mistake as well. That I want too much in the photograph.
Hmm.
I want everything,
Yeah.
but you have to make a choice. So then you make a choice later. But mostly it's better to go there and walk around and see what's interesting.
I like the phrase you used on a picture of mine earlier about you're betting on too many horses.
That's actually a technique people used to use. You would bet $5 off on every horse, and but I guess that never works. But a lot of people think if you do that, you're going to get money ahead.
Hmm.
But
But
there's
first you told about getting to what's your thing in the photograph? I don't know how you call this in English. Your definition of one thing in the photograph.
Like the
content.
subject or the focus.
Subject, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have two subjects,
Yeah.
and then the photographer cannot make a choice, or one is big and the other one is small. And
It's
actually,
the,
the small one is more interesting than the big one.
yeah.
Well, then you can tell, why don't you take a picture of the small thing
Where's the
instead of
dynamic between those things that is what you're
yeah.
actually trying to capture.
Well, there's symmetry there too. Even if it's an
Yeah.
unbalanced symmetry, but there's still symmetry. But then you have dynamic symmetry, which I'm not going to get into right now. That's more of an art thing where you just have these repeated triangles. If you
Mhm.
split the screen, like from the middle to the corners, and you keep repeating that until you have all these triangles, and you can find this type of symmetry that's deliberate in ancient paintings and things like that. But we won't go into that right now. But similar words, um, synonyms would be worth, usefulness. Uh, there are a lot of desirability, but that wouldn't be a good one for that. Um, but I like the worth and merit because I would like to be more concise. Because if I tell people, oh well, this is increasing the value, people might interpret that as I'm talking about making something brighter.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of, as you said earlier, I mean, the context really matters. So, like, if we're talking about birders, it's pretty rare, I think, that a lot of birders would see great value in an image that did not have, let's say, the whole bird. or they want to get a sense of the kind of structure or the movement of the bird kind of frozen in a particular way. But they might not, they might like, but they might not value in quite the same way something that maybe isolates, I don't know, the plumage as opposed to the whole. Like there's a lot of people are trying to go for that kind of explosive energy of a bird, taking off, landing, flying, those kinds of things. And so the notion of worth can be kind of caught up in having executed an image that ticks all the boxes in terms of sharpness, in terms of energy, in terms of the kind of colors that just kind of explode off the page. Whereas for other folks, they're working in as you said, Jan, earlier, like the value of light, the value of like if you look at Saul Leiter's work, he's playing in he's got a whole different box of crayons than someone who's trying to do something that's very crisp and detailed. He's maybe a little bit more dreamy and playing with distortion and planes of reflection.
A bird photographer will say, well, that's not sharp.
Yeah, so what?
And so lighter photographers say, well, that's fine and sharp.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so the notion of quality and worth, I think, has to come back in terms of both the person who has created it and the person who is valuing it. Maybe they're buying it, maybe they're spending time with it because it pleases them in one way or another. But I think it gets really hard. I mean, we keep coming back to this conversation about how do we perform, let's say, to the quality standards of a genre. And I think that for the most part, we could probably agree that if you're in the game where you're trying to become a really effective landscape photographer, you're going to have an easier time of it if your horizons are flat. You might be a fantastic landscape photographer who likes diagonal horizons, but you're going to be in a lot of arguments with people about your image, which might be
I
fun.
think I've seen a photograph of a woman who made a portrait, and she made it with the angle like this. So with a house, the roof of a house like this in the back, and it was not bad. It was good.
But there needs to be some type of rhythm going on there or something that makes it work. You don't want it to be like, oh, that horizon is crooked. You don't want that to be the first thing you notice with a photo.
Yeah.
You might go, wow, look at this energy in this image. And then you might somewhere down the road go, well, yeah, the horizon's crooked, but look how well it works.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between those things. But yeah, anyway, that was my question, though, was about I want to try to use something besides value to say, if you do this, we'll increase the value. If you don't do this, the way you shoot that made it harder to be.
Yeah.
Well, you would lose value if something was there. Like if you left a telephone pole out of somebody's head. That's a great
which I've
scene.
done more than once.
Yeah, mostly telephone poles are bad in your photo. For people's heads, I'd take them out if I can.
I can't remember who posted this really interesting shot that I thought was really interesting. It was a very remote place somewhere in northern Europe, and it was a beautiful landscape scene of a kind of a rustic cabin and everything on the edge of a lake, and there are mountains in the background. And then there are telephone wires or utility wires coming through. And I loved it because in part it was punctuating that kind of notion of the sterile, landscape in nature where you have human presence, but it's totally overwhelmed with the presence of the magnificent nature in the background. And then there are those wires, but the wires actually carried a visual line through the image that focused in on the subject in a way that I found visually effective. And it was also what was there. And so, again, there are lots of folks who will purposely or just not see that as an issue to have the presence of something like a wire or a pole or anything amidst the beauty of the landscape.
Mostly landscape photographers will take them out, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, what we talked about earlier about benchmarking. So landscape photography, how often do you see landscape photographs with wires going across the sky? There are probably some, and I think I might remember the photo. If it was on Flickr, I might remember.
Well, it was within Weekly. It was within Weekly.
And I think if that's the case, if for that to work, the lines must be there for a reason other than, oh well, the lines are always there.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, and so for me, they were part of the composition. And
Mhm.
it's possible that, again, coming back to your question, that a lot of people looking at the same composition would value it more. And that's some of the critique that that photo received was just that. This would be much stronger without the wires. Whereas there were other chorus of people who said they like it fine with the wires in, including myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Well,
but actually, we are photographers and we want to communicate with the other people about our photo. So we need each other. So I can make photographs that you don't like, but then I stop maybe after a few weeks because nobody likes my photos.
mm,
oh, poor thing.
And then, but the other thing is, if I make photographs and they like it a bit, then I'm working on something. So then I get feedback of my photos because, well, some people's opinions are that I communicate something with them.
Yes, absolutely.
But
And again, with the
if there is
value,
no communication, then I can stop it.
mhm.
yeah.
So you need to have each other, I think.
And from the wider society of photographers, though, that's when again, I'm talking about benchmarking. That's where value is relative to that, compared to what value might be for a smaller niche group, for example, who
Mhm.
somebody wants something. They always love photos that have all this clutter.
Yeah.
That value for those people would be high if you had, a lot of distracting elements. So,
I, the photo I put in weekly this week with the two young photographers, street photographers, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, I ended up having like a half an hour conversation on the side of the street with them, which was really wonderful. And one of the things that we ended up talking about, so the one guy who had the camera around his neck, he and I knew a lot and were familiar with a lot of the same photographers. So he was really a eager young photographer and doing interesting things with that crazy camera that he was shooting. He shoots that camera because he likes the scale focus. So
Yeah.
all you can do is kind of set this to, either in, close up, medium, or far, and that's it. And so it's got all those constraints, and it can go underwater. But one of the things he was talking about is how dispiriting he sometimes finds it posting work in places like, we talked like, where do you put your photos? And I said I'm on Flickr, and he was kind of on Instagram, but the kind of the way in which the community with Instagram, or let's say the algorithms, maybe more particular within Instagram, if you actually want to move your way into getting recognition from that community, it kind of drives you to a certain kind of photography, the photography that attracts likes. The same kind of thing can happen within Flickr communities or the weekly community, where you're chasing after affirmation or attention or responses to your image. And that might be okay, but it could also be very problematic in terms of changing what you're inspired to take pictures about, or
Yeah.
or what drives you and motivates you, or what your own vision is. And I think it's really important for people to kind of figure out maybe or make sense of a distinction between, okay, this is an image I really like, and this is the kind of image I really want to create. And that may not be something that a whole bunch of other people like, which has no bearing perhaps on the value in you continuing to refine your vision and create the art or create the images that you want to create. And I think negotiating through that, especially in kind of the intense and chaotic kind of social media world of photography now, is very hard and very different than all of us experienced when we kind
yeah,
of grew up, because it was probably fairly, Flickr didn't start until, 25 years ago. Photo sharing was certainly happening, but it wasn't like anything what we see now. So if you're a photographer now and you are chasing after this and you use it as a platform to get clients, other kinds of things, it could well be changing what you photograph in ways
Yeah.
that are productive or ways that are not so productive.
But there are artists who are only famous after the death. Eh?
Yeah,
So if you say Van Gogh, then
yeah,
he was a very good painter. But in his years, nobody knew he was a good
yeah.
painter.
Yeah, no, Vivian Meyer in photography, so
Yeah.
her work wasn't even discovered until
So
Maybe she didn't want to be discovered either.
well,
So
there's
that was
that
good.
too. Yeah.
It's
in a way,
crazy.
you have to be a bit strange as well, because if
Yeah.
you want to be pretty famous, then maybe nobody likes you now in these days.
Yeah.
What I like to
Like,
do when I do critique on a photo, I was trying to give suggestions and hints about to help it out, and I'm talking from within the framework of that the benchmarks.
yeah.
So when I see especially a beginner photographer and they're making these mistakes, I'm trying to say, here's how you can get more into that ballpark or into the right direction. Where maybe that person wants all these artifacts in their photos, if that's the case. And we do have people on Flickr that do that kind of thing, but I usually just don't evaluate the photos because I don't understand that language. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that, but that's not where I'm going to be able to offer much
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think that there is a reasonable difference between, like someone who just doesn't understand processing and could make some simple changes to have a picture that's much cleaner and crisper. But the aesthetics behind the picture maybe aren't really at play there. It's just like how to process something, and that could include just general exposure in terms of photographic exposure. But it's as I say, I mean, for some folks, they start to chase after just the affirmation of people who like the image, and that can be a bit of a distraction, I think, and kind of lead people down the wrong road
Yeah.
in terms of their own vision and the things that they kind of value in terms of their what they're attracted to or what they're trying to achieve with
And
photography.
I think if you do that, then the next thing you know, you have to put all this effort in by posting stuff in groups and slapping on these. I saw this on this site or whatever like that.
Yeah,
So then that's a whole nother ball game there. I mean, if you're really interested in lights, you have to work at that stuff.
yeah.
So you said you had a photo you wanted to show.
Well, yeah, I'll show one, or I'll show a couple. Let
Yeah.
me set up for that. Can I share?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I didn't turn that on yet. Should have thought about that to begin with. Come on. I'm not one to share. Come on, you.
I'll share some concert pictures with you. Actually, one before concert, then a couple in a concert.
Okay, you're all set.
All right, let's try that. Is that what I want? No, I want that. So you were asking the starting in terms of I'm still going out and shooting a fair bit, though the weather is changing that a little bit.
Yeah.
So this was from Friday night. So I was heading to a show downtown, and so I go down a couple hours early, so I have time to walk around a bit before the show. And so I kind of like this one because of, well, it's rainy season in Vancouver, so then I'm kind of shooting in the rain, and so I have a camera out that's basically I can shoot it with no worry about the rain. And it's again a 28 mm lens, so I've got I'm doing more street photography style, but I'm also going to take this into a concert, which poses interesting challenges and constraints because you can't zoom at all really, or get too close. But I like this because of there's so much light coming from the traffic towards me. And then there was what caught my eye here is there's someone sitting in the bus shelter there who's obscured by the reflections of the water and the light and everything. But you can tell it's a pretty miserable night out here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to shoot in the street at night in the rain at this time of year is I find it kind of fun.
It looks like you did, yeah, to get a good shot framing this in general. So yeah, I think this is a classic example of frame the shot and wait.
Yeah.
So
Well, but this really wasn't a wait. So in terms of the technique, like I took two images here. This is one I preferred, but I'm walking towards it. And as I'm walking towards it, I see the image of the person there. And so I took an initial shot, and the initial shot didn't have the man walking to the right, who kind of adds a sense of just how miserable it was. And nor did it have quite that traffic configuration with the motorcycle and such. So, sizing up the shot and so this is more I'm walking through something, and I took two exposures, and it was the second one that kind of set right for me. But I did come in a little bit because in the original shot, that bench structure in the front, I thought visually I should complete that bench structure, but it was to your earlier point, it was adding this kind of bright white shape right at the front, which kind of blocked me from going into the frame when in fact it's the
You were
figure.
quite low, I think, huh?
Um, uh, Maybe hunched a little bit, but it's pretty much. I may have brought the camera down a little bit too. I can't recall precisely, but I like the fact that like the subject I wanted is sharp, and then the motorcycle and is a little bit blurred and everything, but it kind of gives a sense of motion and just a miserable night.
Yeah, the good thing is the light and through the glasses, huh? And the light in the left,
Yeah, I mean that was the hook of the whole image.
and the car that's in the back there with the lights.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, the foundation of this,
The motorcycle I like as well. Only the car behind the motorcycle I don't like.
Yeah, and so I thought about that in that I could take it out, but then it's, it like this is more of a street, like with street photography, I don't take things out very often. Or if I do, I'm very like it's going to be something on an edge, but something like
Yeah.
this would be would have been happier had the world served me the
Yeah.
motorcycle without the car, but it didn't. At the
Right.
same time, if you look past the motorcycle, I don't know if this will zoom for you.
Yeah, if you take out the motorcycle, then it will not work, I think. Huh?
Well, no, I was going to say that if you look past the motorcycle, there's also, did this zoom up for you? Do you see the zoomed in view?
Nice.
So you
yes.
see the man in the car. So now there's a third subject there that if I take the car out,
Yeah.
I take that out.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that you
this
don't
was a
see.
good example of where I started off cropping in and then I pulled back out to keep everything that was there,
Yeah.
mostly.
What would you say would be the anchor compositionally in this photo?
Well, the anchor is the figure in the bus shelter.
Yeah. The light. Yeah.
Well, I would say, yeah, the figure in the bus shelter is ornaments on this anchor,
Okay,
as well
what's
as
the
the
anchor for
motorcycle.
you?
I'm saying the lines of perspective. Look where the vanishing point is.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's the other thing. Like, so because of the reflection on the marble of the building, it keeps pulling your eye back. But then you land on the Main Street mini mart, so it actually kind of ends up being a kind of a corner shot in effect. But the foreground elements still kind of hold their own in that.
Yeah, it allows you to bounce around the photo.
Yeah.
It's not constantly being drawn to that wall. You have the bright
Yeah.
headlights. You have the two bright headlights behind the person walking. But I would say, like vanishing point is close to the rule of thirds position.
Yeah.
So,
And that's also where I put the subject.
But
Yeah.
I think if you were more close to the bus station, it would be a good photo as well. So more towards the man
Yeah.
behind the
And
glass.
to get any closer, I would have been in that man's face a little bit more than I wanted to be. So I took the shots and
Yeah,
then
sometimes
kept
you
walking.
have to take a risk, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I took some other ones that the other picture I put in weekly that the biker who clocked me taking the picture of him, he wasn't pleased with me, but in any
No.
case, he kept riding, which was good. So this is on the way to this place. This is called the Rickshaw, and there was a jazz metal 20-piece orchestra playing, which is an absurd thing to see. It was just a crazy show to see. And so in this shot, I'm, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters back from the stage. I started up really close to the stage because of the previous act, but then I'm looking into all of these music stands. So I had no view of the musicians, just their stands. So I pulled back. And again, I'm shooting the next series. All of these pictures are with a 28 millimeter lens, prime lens.
Nice.
And then she came out to sing. And at this point, I'm right in front of the stage.
Yeah.
So I really like this shot.
Yeah. A lot of cables.
I like the look on the guy's face with the beard with the sax.
Yeah, yeah. I had another shot of this moment too, but it wasn't quite as sharp. And in that one, and I prefer it, even though it's not as sharp. He's got his head up like this, and he's shouting to match her shouting, and the two of them are shouting side by side. It's quite lovely, but this is the one that I felt because of the sharpness of the detail on the singer was it had more value as a shot. Although the other one has a different energy to it, even though it's not quite as sharp.
Very nice black and white. Huh?
Yeah, and this is the monochrome camera, so that's all I can do with this camera, just black and white.
Well, you did a
The
good job
lights. The
navigating through the
lights,
stands.
lights and the smoke is very nice,
So to show you a couple more from this concert. And here's a good example where, and I go back and forth on this one. I might at some point recrop this to get rid of those components on the stage, but then it also kind of framed it for me. And the
No,
stage is messy. That is the stage.
it's
So
normal.
I would crop it out, but I wouldn't sweep them out with AI or anything.
Yeah. If you crop it out, then you lose lose the context, huh?
Well, exactly. You lose context and they're diminishing returns. But yeah,
Yeah.
and similarly with cables, I mean, there are times when like I could have taken that microphone out, but then you potentially there are shots where you can't do that, or I think there are times you shouldn't do that, but you lose continuity with the actual event, and then you can lose continuity between your shots too.
Well, I would say if you were actually to get into a conversation with this singer, see if you
Mhm.
can have her mic stand at a different spot and show her this photo. Because
Yeah,
I
well,
think,
that happened to me once. I was at a show and there was this amazing bass player in front of me, a young woman from Edmonton, and I was right up front and I shared all the pictures with her afterwards and they were really good pictures, I thought, but in half of them they were being blocked by her stand, and she said, "Oh, I wish I had been off book," which means she wouldn't have had a music stand in front of her, but she still got a whole bunch of pictures with herself without that, but couldn't get the her lower finger work on the strings, which I got once the stand was out of the way.
But you take this photo with 2.2, and then the man in the back is quite sharp as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing lens, but it varies. Like my distance to the subject point was probably sufficient to give me a bit more of a well, but I also was trying not to get the ISO shooting up too high. I mean, I can shoot and I will shoot up to 25,000 ISO with this camera, but it has diminishing returns, but it has a beautiful texture to it even at high ISO.
Yeah.
And because it's black and white, I can lean in a little bit into kind of a grainy image.
Mhm.
but the subject like this works with some grain.
Yeah, exactly. So here's me, in the back of the room again, just using my feet to affect a zoom. The conductor was just astounding and really vibrant. So the room was packed. There was a mosh pit going. It was really fun. I was caught up in the mosh pit at one point, which was a bit jarring, but that's in for a penny, in for a pound. Then I think I have one more. Yeah. Oh yeah. And this is the one where you're talking about, I told you about the recropping. So I came in, I cropped the guy out on the left, and I was trying to come in just to have the stage, but that guy's big head just kind of was wrecking the shot for me. And it just kept wrecking the shot for me. And I tried taking it out and everything, and I wasn't happy with that. But when I backed up a little bit and got the side of the other viewer's head off the left, it balanced it back for me. So I'm now content to, like it's still blocking, but it's not blocking very much. But because of the balance back farther, it almost looks like you're looking through the eyes of the person on the left onto the
Yeah,
stage.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this would be for me. This would be a very challenging thing to shoot. So yeah, I'm glad you're doing this. It's got to be a great exercise.
Oh, it's fun. Okay, I'll stop sharing. And the thing I really enjoy about it is that because everything is happening so fast, and it's happening once, and then there's a sequence here that well, it's the same one that was on the screen there, where the strobes behind the band were kind of cycling through like very dark to very bright. And so it's almost like I've got an additional aperture on stage that's changing the light. So it's going from almost black to really overexposed very, very rapidly. And so I can't be fast enough to change the camera to accommodate that, but I can try to leverage that in terms of getting, somewhere in between shots that are going to be reasonably exposed. But the speed of stuff going on and the choices you have to make, and you really only have like a couple tries at it. I find it's just kind of fun. I come away kind of feeling a little bit more engaged with the concert shooting like that.
Yeah. Now, what you said it was heavy metal and big band mixed up
It
like
was it was a project that they call themselves a jazz metal orchestra, And these musicians are probably, a lot of them are classical or classically trained musicians. They're a very, very talented group of people. And then he brought in like the singer and the guitar player in the last one. Those are both musicians who play with heavy metal bands. So the singer, that kind of metal, that really jarring, deep, gravelly metal voice.
Yeah.
What Lita, the singer, Lita EXO, that's what she was singing with. So I have one shot that was really funny that I didn't put up, where she's just screaming away and singing, and that first sax player is kind of has this worried look on his face because he's right beside her, and then the one next to him is kind of up and howling with her. So like some of those interactions are fun to capture. But yeah, the music was really provocative and fun in some respects, like they were doing like Stravinsky with metal, right? So they were mixing together classical, swing, and metal genres. It was pretty wacky.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see like the good, say, Enter Sandman, Metallica's Enter Sandman with like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, anyways, you know, I really enjoy this kind of environment because it's challenging. I like shooting like I kind of debated. I have a couple different cameras I might take into a shot like that or into a show like this. I find I really like coming in with black and white because I just shoot differently in that way, and shooting with a 28 millimeter lens rather than like I'll sometimes have a 75 millimeter telephoto, which I can be a lot more tight in on the band, but this forces me to deal a lot more with context. Actually, there's one or no, yeah, that's enough to show you.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, so you haven't posted any of those yet, have you?
Those are I posted those yesterday, so they're up on Flickr now.
Yeah, I would say that one with the women screaming in the microphone would be a good one. I think everybody loved that one in particular. I think that's a great dynamic.
Yeah. Well, it's nice when when you capture an image and you can feel the energy of the moment. I mean, that's really what or the atmosphere of the context. That's really what I'm hoping to capture.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No.
Yeah, here in Bloomington, we have a thing called the Lotus Festival. That's every September, and they have like a 3 day week, 3 day weekend where they have groups like more like world music,
Mhm.
like from India and Japan and Nova Scotia and all these different in these under these tents. And there are people that here that will photograph of that stuff. I need to think about that, doing that myself.
I have a couple of friends who are pretty nervous about street photography, and so one of the things I've encouraged them to do is to do just that, like go to a street festival or a performance and kind of practice taking images of people there because then you I think kind of maybe it helps you to be a little bit more relaxed in doing it.
Yeah.
But in this kind of context, what I also like is I know the promoter who puts on these shows and the venues are often quite small. So I get to share these or have conversations with the musicians and I give them the images and so it feels a little bit more intimate rather than impersonal. But then being in the midst of the crowd is kind of fun too, because then I get to talk to photographers in the crowd here. And I know several of them now. And so you run into people who are actively shooting and they're of all ages. So it's kind of fun to kind of interact with those folks.
Yeah, it's not easy to start, eh? So if you are a beginner in photography, then you need to start somewhere, and you don't know what the rules are. And
Yeah,
well, if there's a festival outside, then it's more easy, I think,
yeah,
because every musician like to be photographed, and if it's yeah, it depends on how the public is. So if you take a few photos and nobody is telling you something that is not allowed, then well, then you go and go for it, and you make more, and then
yeah.
there it starts, huh?
Well, and it's fascinating because like increasingly, like, everyone has their phones out and they're doing video and
Yeah.
and stills off their phones of the things. I mean, I still sometimes am feel I'm sneaking a camera in because they sometimes won't let you bring a more professional camera in. There's always that kind of boundary crossing that you might do a little bit of. But as I say, I think that a lot of attitudes towards having people imaging in a crowd, like with phones and videos, and the fact that a lot of publication and publicity originates with things that are happening in the crowd when people are shooting bands.
But it depends on where you are, and it
It does.
depends on the circumstances as well. This week I was photographing and I walked over a market. This is a small market in my village, but I had a telelens on my camera,
Hmm.
and I saw a man with a kind of shop outside with watches, a lot of watches, and then a small square, and his
Hmm.
head was in the small square. But I was thinking, well, how am I going to make this photograph? Because he was looking at me, and
Yeah.
uh,
So
I
my
went
trick.
I went to a corner in the street, and then I set my camera, my lens on a place near where he was, and then I saw him looking. So I was there on the other side of him. But then I turned to him and he said,
uh,
this place is a small village where the people are looking at each other. And then some people don't like to be photographed. I
yeah,
understand it. So I don't do. But if this was in Amsterdam, I think this was not a problem because everybody is photographing everybody. But what
yeah,
you tell me is true as well. With a small smartphone, nobody tells you something that you are not going to photograph because everybody is photographing each other with smartphones.
yeah. Well,
But if you
and
are with a big telelens, then it's not allowed.
yeah. Well, and that's what it's even like with just the 28 millimeter lens, like my camera, it looks like that.
No
So
problem. And you are
it's
quick, I think, as well. So
I'm
if you
very quick.
are in this situation, you would go there, make a photo, and go, I
Yeah.
think.
However, there are times like when you were telling the story about the man, if I've been noticed taking a picture, I will make direct eye contact, kind of nod my head and kind of do a quick ask. And more often than not, people are fine. But you're absolutely right. It depends a lot on context. It depends upon the environment. And as I said, when I took a picture of that guy on the bike, that mean looking guy with all the tattoos on the bike, I took a few others of him as well, but that transaction could have gone in a different direction very quickly. So you have to kind of gauge it in the moment, especially when you're doing it at night on the street.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe the difference between you and me is that I don't want that the people are knowing that I make a photograph. So you make
Generally,
contact,
yes,
and
I
I
agree.
I don't like to make contact mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
prefer not to, but there are times when it's fine. I prefer candid, but there are times when, the contact is made, the acknowledgement is there, and it's also a fine photographic moment.
Yeah,
and
but
like you said, it's a small village too. I think there were going to be people more standoffish.
yeah,
Hmm.
That's people who live in a more jaded area, like
yeah.
that dirty Vancouver for crying out loud.
Yes, yes. I'm giving people the impression that the whole city is sketchy, and it's not. It's actually very pretty beautiful.
But Alex Webb, he told in one of his YouTube films, when people don't like that to have a photograph, he uh, he uses a trick of he has always everything in his mind. He walks through it, make a photo, and go.
Yeah,
Then you don't feel embarrassed or you don't feel bad, and you don't know the reaction of the people.
yeah. We've talked about this before. I don't like being sneaky. Like I see people kind of shooting where they're hiding the camera or doing things like that. I think that or being, using a 200 millimeter lens to kind of just snipe people from afar. I think I take better pictures if I'm engaged and I've got the camera up or I'm quick about it and I'm moving through. I just take better pictures than if I'm kind of like there are people who walk through and they have it down at their hip and they click, 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 click. you can get something sometimes doing that, but I never like the pictures as much. I don't feel as involved in taking them.
When I was shooting people with in the urgency project, I took 4 or 5 mostly because one or two can have it and the other one can have it not. So, but this depends on what you're doing, eh? So
Yeah. Yeah.
people in sport doing this as well.
But I think in general, doing this kind of photography is useful. Like it really warms you up and gives you good practice in terms of seeing something and responding quickly and getting it, or moving into a position to try to create the situation where you'll be able to image what you're hoping to image.
Yeah.
So, in the course of things, those are all good instincts or practices to
Yeah.
take to whatever kind of
Depends
photography.
depends on what you're doing as well. If you're waiting for a shot, then it's different than when you are in the middle of the people and you want to make
Yeah.
pictures.
And there's no context where, like, I can't use a flash here. I can't use a tripod here at all. It's just
Yeah.
not allowed, right?
Yeah.
So having to figure out how do you set the camera so that you can get sharp images without a tripod, without a flash, under low light conditions. That's also part of the constraint.
Yeah, and if you are in a musical as where you are, then nobody is telling you something that it's not good to make a photograph. That's because everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
people
so
are pretty happy here.
it depends on the mood of the people as well. If they are in a day off, everybody is free. Nobody is telling you something. But if it's 2 days after on Monday, when they are going to work again, they are protesting of something for small things. So it depends on actually on the people's mind as well. So you have to feel what their mind is.
Yeah.
Do you either one of you use business cards?
I don't currently, but I'm thinking I should at some point make, like, it's just hard to point people to a Flickr site. And, again, even I'm thinking, well, I should probably get a few things where I can put it up on Instagram, but I just hate Instagram. So
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I have some. Sometimes I shoot somebody and I tell them that I've shoot them and I give them a card. So if they mostly I
yeah,
tell them that send me your email and then I send you the photograph. So then
yeah.
I know if they want it. If they don't want, then no problem.
I had the business cards that had I could give them to people when they were asking about things I was taking. I would just give them to them, and there's a QR code on the back. Will take me to my Adobe portfolio page. So if you can tell somebody says, "Well, why'd you take my picture?" And you can say, "Oh, here I'm a photographer. Here, why don't you? I'll see if I can. You just send me your email, and I'll send it to you. At least be friendly about it." But I
Yeah.
think that'd be a useful tool in your arsenal
Oh, absolutely.
to not get cornered.
I think I told you the story where my son and I we were walking around Shibuya in Tokyo one day a couple of years ago, and we got approached by a street portraitist, and he was shooting with an analog camera, and he asked to take our portrait, one of my favorite pictures, and he had a book of all these portraits he's taken over the years. Probably had 1,000 portraits in there, and so he presented that, showed it, and then of course we were happy to join that collection of portraits. And then he went so far he got my email, and then he actually developed it, scanned it, and emailed it to me. So that was fun.
Hmm.
There was one of my photography club members, and he's older than I am, but he was when he graduated college. His parents paid for him to travel all around Europe, and he was in Greece at the Acropolis, and there was a guy taking photographs for like I don't know how much for his minimal amount of money, and he said, "Sure, you can take my photograph," but he actually developed the film under a black thing over
Mm.
his head to give the prints.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
that and I still don't. I know I've Googled that, and there's got to be a process that he was using there. But I think that's a fascinating thing. And there was when I was in Paris recently, there was a guy there I thought was doing that over by Notre Dame. And by the time I was interested in taking something else, when I came back, he was gone because I was going to ask him about it.
There are folks in Vancouver who have a little setup where they basically have some digital printer that will very quickly, and they've kind of mocked it up to look like an old field camera.
Um,
And so
That's
they'll
what it
take
looked
the
like. Yeah.
picture, and then they'll, within a couple minutes, you've got a print of it.
Yeah. So,
I see them out around where the tourists are hanging out.
but I was fascinated what he had to say about that stuff. Now, another thing, a question I was going to have, John Paw in a discussion, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it had to do with AI discussion, but he created, or I think he created a term, resolution vector.
Yeah, he talks about that sometimes.
Yeah.
It
And
depends on my
that's like
pictures.
you do the thumbnail, fit to screen, or full res. So, and what the advantage of having all three of those, and I would say there's a fourth one, kind of, in that so many people only look at photos on their phones.
Hmm.
So there's not really any thumbnail involved. They just, boom, they click the thumbnail and then they just look at it on their phone. So what would be, I mean, that's all in a digital world. What would be your thoughts on that type of thing and what the advantages are, if there are any, or disadvantages?
I mean, when I look at the weekly photos, I often will bring them up into a higher resolution to view. And, because of the compression that already happens when you upload, often you can't really make out details when you're looking at a thumbnail or, the larger presented view. So for me, the only way I can more critically engage with the photos if I can see it properly. So I rarely will provide feedback until I've looked at it at a higher resolution. And I'm grateful when people, and I know sometimes there's been some problems with this with Flickr settings, but I love it when you can actually see the highest resolution possible, because then you can get a little bit more into the details. And in the details, you often see more subtlety in terms of like the tonal balance or the noise in the image or lack thereof, the sharpness, those kinds of things maybe stand out a little bit more at a higher resolution, where at lower resolution, it's a bit more kind of fudged together. So you'll notice the key discernible aspects, but you won't see the subtleties in the color, the light, the resolution.
But when you make it bigger in Flickr, you always see it in the highest resolution, or you have to do something.
When you go to, there's that little download button, and then you can choose, and I usually will go to original size. So like, for instance, the images I showed you, original size is 7,952 by
And you get the
5584.
better quality.
Yeah, and I can see it at, a full
Okay.
screen, and I can zoom in if I choose to, or a smaller one if I need to. But I think, Teddy, you made the point once that it's pretty hard to kind of critique something with, fewer than 1,000 pixels.
Yeah.
I think it's almost, I mean, I begrudgingly agree that 2048 on the long side,
Yeah.
depending on the DPI, is enough to evaluate. But something smaller than that, forget it. I mean, who knows? It's not even in focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
But I would say, I think what he was implying, though, somewhat with this was that the thumbnail, like you're looking at all these thumbnails, okay? So which one stops you from going to the next one? So the thumbnail has some type of quality that
bit of a
makes
hook.
you decide to, a hook. He uses the word hook. So then you want to click it and you can see the full size, not the full size, but the image, the screen filled image. And at that point, you might be curious enough, you want to see it full size. I think some people aren't interested in full size. In fact, I think they're kind of prejudiced against it because they think that's pixel peeping, which I think is an idiotic thing. But I think his point is good. I think that's an interesting way to think about it. And of course, this is kind of the opposite, not the opposite. It's totally different from if you were to share prints with somebody. Somebody here, look at this print. So this is a total different world. But we are now in the digital world, so you don't really have. There's no way we could have all of our photos as prints to show people
Mhm.
without spending, $80,000 to make them all 20 by 24 images. So we're stuck, even though an ideal situation would be if there were prints you could actually hand to someone. That's not where we're going to be. We're
No.
looking at computer screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring my prints to to Flickr everywhere.
But I think the other way this plays out is, so a lot of folks are increasingly shooting portrait mode if they're shooting on the phone, because that's how they will view it, instinctually or naturally, even in portrait mode. I think in a previous conversation I mentioned that I generally prefer landscape because when I'm viewing my images on a big monitor, I see a larger image. So whereas if I were printing more, I'd maybe spend a little bit more, like, I should shoot certain things in portrait because that's a better aspect ratio for way to frame it than landscape for the particular subject. But these things influence what we do, because if we're generally putting our stuff out in a medium where people are looking at on the phone and they're looking in a portrait mode, your picture is going to be bigger if you shoot it in portrait than if you shoot it in landscape.
And if you look at a group of thumbnails, the vertically oriented ones are smaller. They take up
Yeah.
less territory. So you would have you're more apt for the viewer to pay attention to the bigger ones.
Yep. 16:9 all the way.
Yeah.
Create more space.
And I don't know how to, I like to look at photos, even though I can't see the whole thing. I find it fun to explore a photo at full and scroll around and see the details.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a word for that, full res would do it all right, but I mean, I think the immediate thing is to have a screen that's big enough to hold full res. So, but I don't have a problem scrolling around to see the details. And maybe I'll give an example of one that was posted here. Where am I? There we go. And if we go to,
Yeah, this is a nice one.
I'm not talking about,
I liked all the concrete in that one, the textures on the concrete.
can you see it now or?
Which one are you? Is it the memoir that you want?
No, that's not the one I was wanting to show you. No, it's something irritated my throat today. So that's not the one I was wanting to show, but let me go back to this. Back to the group. No. There was a good photo here among many. Scroll past it. The landscape. Oh, here it is.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Now, what I have a problem with this is because there's a vignette coming in from the right. That's not natural. It's almost like a UFO is about ready to cover over everything.
Well,
So-
and is there a bit of veiling flare? I'm wondering because I was thinking there's atmospheric effects here because it's slightly foggy,
yeah.
or the contrast is it makes it look slightly foggy.
My guess is the photographer here, is it Karen? He is trying to draw attention to the plains with the barn and the sheep.
Yeah.
But and to me, when I first looked at that, I said, oh man, that vignette's killing it. But if you do I'm gonna get the larger version up. So you can see it's pretty sharp throughout. But then when you see the details of this barnyard and the sheep,
Hmm.
he did a good job. I don't know if I might have a chance to evaluate this, analyze this photo.
But like when I look
But
up on the crest of that hill, I mean, there's almost like a little bit of like mist or fog. And
yeah,
when I first saw this, I thought there was a bit of a veiling flare coming off from the direction of the light on the top. But I mean, the lens, what's the aperture of the lens? Or sorry, focal length of the lens, because it could have a bit of, it could be a wide lens with a bit of vignetting.
130
Sorry,
millimeters.
that shouldn't be then. No, that's not it. I shoot sometimes with really wide lenses, and there is a vignette, and you learn to love it or you crop it up.
But I think as you explore this, I mean, I think if you saw this as a 16 by 20 on the wall, to me, I would still be bugged by that dark corner. But even at 16 by 20, I don't think you're going to get the details of that exquisite scene, barnyard scene there. So I don't know how you would refer to that as you're kind of mining the details out of an image by scrolling through it. I mean, I've got like a 44-inch monitor here, and I still don't get a full screen view of that if I go to 100%.
Right.
So anyway, that's where I was going with this, was say, with your aspect all the way out. And then you can see, like I said, this is a sharp photo. He did a good job of making this sharp. And he shot it at f11, obviously on a tripod, because it was a fifth of a second.
135 or something.
Yeah.
But I think you might also, since we're talking about resolution, I think we may also be dealing with resolution of the lens. I mean, it's sharper in the center than it is on the edges. And maybe with f11, we're going to get a little bit of diffraction coming into play as well. So the lens is not at its sharpest at f11. And you can see like the sharpness on the trees. I mean, it's there, but it gradually softens as you head up. So I think that the lens effects are in here a little bit. Like if you scroll up a little bit from where you are right now, like if you can see the leaves, like the texture on the trees becomes softer and softer as we go into the foreground, and it's the darkening there. But it's the dark extends too far into the frame to be a vignette to my eyes.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing I noticed, though, was that like almost a blob dangling in front of the image. So I think the sunlight that's hitting these fall trees in the upper right-hand corner would be as bright as this.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have left more of that in, I think.
What might not be clear here, like again, the light's confusing me here a little bit, but the rolling of these hills and like if you go up to full screen again, like your eye just kind of traces down the ridges of these hills, into the brighter scene there. It's really be a lovely place to be standing to look down into.
Yeah. If this were me, I would shoot this at f5.6 and focus stack it. And then you wouldn't have to worry about sharpness so much. And you would use in my lens, it would be like the ultimate, that's the sharpest aperture. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's a great image, but it's almost like there's something in my eye.
Yeah, it is sunset, so the light is low, and the light is coming through a lot of particles in the atmosphere. So it makes sense that it's it's less clear as you move into the back.
Yeah, but my problem is the darkness. It's not unnaturally dark looking. I mean, I've been in scenes like this before.
In the left corner is a bit dark as well, huh?
But if the sun is off to our left, if I think, but it could also be that, there could be a shadow being cast by a hill further to the west of us here.
We're catching some highlights of the yellow trees that should match the yellow trees in the lower section. You notice the yellow highlights here, how dim the yellow highlights there, because that's sunbeams coming.
Yeah.
So there's no shadow involved. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I think this is a great photo and it's a good one to explore. And you're not likely to see a print that big.
Mhm.
So, and not only, not to mention the fact there's no halos. I'm not seeing any over processing artifacts,
Mhm.
which you would frequently see with shots like this for people, especially for beginners.
Well, especially if they're trying to lift the tones and the shadows to match the foreground. That's
Yeah.
going to introduce a lot of noise.
Now, while we're at this, there's another photo, and I think it's a good photo, but and Arn's shots are dynamite generally.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts about? I mean, he explains in the comments why the entire reflection isn't there. But what do you think about that chopped off reflection?
I think it would be better when he was totally in the picture. And the format is a bit strange as well, huh?
I can go either way with this one because I mean I agree generally that when you have reflections like this, to see the fully inversed subject would kind of give me closure, visual closure. But by not having it, and again, this is just me now looking at the image and offering a view, the hump of the umbrella now amplifies the distant hump of the hill in the background. And so because I'm not looking for closure down, I start looking for symmetry up. And so I'm pretty trusting of how Arn frames things. His framing is outstanding, and this is interesting. It would have been more predictable had the full umbrella been there. I haven't read his reason for why it's not.
I think he ran out of puddle,
Oh,
and that you
yeah,
got that happens.
yeah.
Maybe it would be better to cut off all his legs and only the reflection of his legs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I guess if I'm reading it through, if I want the shape of the hill and the umbrella to echo, then we don't need the reflection. But the reflection creates a visual interest, of course. And
I would say if you cloned out the reflection, that would be that would work.
yeah, I gave a favorite to this when I initially saw it.
Yeah, I'm going to favor it. I haven't done it yet, but
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the reflection.
But what was he telling? Why he did it?
It's
In the comments.
yeah. There we go. But I only found fragments.
Mm,
I At this spot, the puddle was the longest and most even, but still not long enough.
yeah. So, that happens. So,
I mean, I've done that with reflections where you can, if you try to get the reflection in a puddle or pond, and then you look up, the whole thing just looks bad. But if you compose the scene so the scene that includes the object that's what would be in the reflection, all you get is an empty puddle. So sometimes you just can't do it.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
But yeah, that's a wonderful photo, though. I agree with that. I mean, I just thought that's an interest because almost everybody brought up the cutoff reflection, which I'm sure that has to be frustrating for them.
Yeah. And speaking of resolution and compression and such, it's amazing how much clearer I can see it on my monitor than through the Zoom session. Like I lose so much detail on the image.
Yes, that definitely would be the case. Yeah, when I do Zoom meetings on my photography club, they have a big screen TV. I'll log in on my computer because you really can't see that much on that big screen TV.
Hmm.
And even that's through Zoom. So that's all the questions I have. Now, Jan, do you have any pictures you want to share?
Yeah, I'm working on a series for the new photo club, but I'm not ready. So
Okay.
I can show you, but let me
Yeah,
see.
I need to get back to so I can stop sharing. One,
Okay.
there we go.
Let me see. Yeah. Here. Yeah, actually, I had a series of 5. I wanted to make a series for urgency and quietness in one. You have to tell me if they are good or not. The first 5 are. No, this one has to be the first one. So this one,
I like the motion here.
that's the 2.
I like the motion there.
It's the 3.
Interesting. The
Or
positions. Oh,
and 5. This I actually wanted to show the world. But then I asked my wife, and she said the first 2 are nothing to me.
Well, that's the way some people are with a uh, with ICM or abstract photos and things.
what
I don't know what you think about it, but you can tell
bring
me.
up the first one again.
Yeah.
What I really like about this is that it's sufficient for me to know what you've got a couple here, so it's not so abstract. I don't know what's here, and then at the same time, the lines of the floor against the movement of the lines on the 2 bodies and the difference in the tonality of the clothes that they're wearing make for really interesting mixtures of the contours and the motion in this. I find really interesting. So I have to sit with it a bit. A critique I would offer here is that, oh, did you just get rid of it? Right at the bottom, there's a little bit of something that's I don't see now. There's at the bottom right corner, there was a line that kind of broke yeah, that. So I would probably just crop it up just a bit so I don't see that bottom left hard diagonal
This one.
down. Yeah, I'm pointing on my screen, the very bottom right corner. There's just a little dark, yeah, right there. No, even below that, the hard
Okay,
line.
this corner.
Yeah, because that's
Triangle.
yeah. So that's really sharp where everything else in the foreground is moving, but
Good point.
the sharpness in caught in the space between their arms up top is perfect. So no, I like this image. It's got so much interesting motion and tonality that is fascinating between the two bodies in the floor.
I'd say one thing about ICM, it's very forgiving. Um, so you can do a lot with orientation. You can flip it upside down or whatever. You can do a lot of retouching and stuff like that. I I think your first one, you need to work a little bit about where the composition is with the forms. Mm, I'm not sure what to do about that, but I think it just needs a little bit more balance or something to it. Probably done with more of a crop. Or you could even extend something off to the left and contextually fill it, and you're still going to have, again, it's ICMs are very forgiving and user friendly. It's easy to contextually fill stuff.
I think it's 1/15 or something, 1/10.
I do
That's
like
good.
you've kept the swoop of the belt there, but bring the second one up again, because that also has some nice
Yeah,
aspects to it.
I think this is more compositionally sound.
Yeah. Your horizon's all over the place. Just joking.
Yeah, that's true.
It's all good though.
But actually nothing sharp, eh?
Yeah.
Well, the angles are more, you're akin to a Dutch angle. Uh,
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
sort of extra
Uh,
energy. It's almost like the person in the farther person is falling down.
yeah.
And the other person here almost seems like some type of mystic that's is causing creating a spell on the person that's falling down or something.
I like the twist that you did here, which is different than the straight movement in the first one. At least I'm assuming you did a bit of a twist.
Actually, there was no relation between the two people. I made it by my
Well, your
camera.
camera, you
Yeah.
turned it a little bit more in this one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like the cross hatching effect. You probably did that in camera, so
Yeah.
cross hatching of the pavement or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And how it bleeds into the skirt.
My movement while the shutter was going.
And the other thing that's really wonderful about this is a diagonal that includes a third subject behind the bus stop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it rewards the additional look if you spend time with it.
Yes.
So actually, it's going from a movement to less movement
Yeah.
to nothing.
So the third one is fabulous with the difference in the bodies, the people of different ages, and how the man is moving, and then especially you go from the man carrying the cane to the young guy with doing kind of a golfing motion. There's a nice juxtaposition there.
Yes. It's got a great balance.
Yeah.
You have, and the silhouette is almost like, there's still some detail in it. So I think this is my favorite of your batch here.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with. I have some reserves as well. This is a reserve as well.
It's not bad.
But I don't know how to put it in, but
Can you go back to the one with the teacup? Because again, thinking about the other one, so I like this one a lot, but I keep staring at that teacup as being too bright. So I don't know if you did, but when I look at that,
yeah,
it
I
looks
made
to
it a
me
bit
like you
brighter.
boosted
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
I think if you could increase the whites of the area around the teacup, that would balance it out. It seems just a little bit too dark, or it
Mhm.
needs a little more sparkle, like more natural looking highlights. I think if you did that, you could probably leave that bright teacup alone.
Mhm.
Keep wanting
Yeah,
to
I
say
guess
teacup.
contra the rest, it pops too much. Did you adjust that?
Yeah, I've made it a little bit more bright.
Well, we all get pretty enthusiastic sometimes in the middle of the night.
Yeah, edits you do late at night are worth reviewing the next day.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then I have this one. So maybe I was thinking maybe to take out one and then take this one in.
Mhm. I love the forms here. I've seen a couple other shots where you are capturing someone coming onto or leaving the train. But the lines here are beautiful, like the vanishing line into the distance with the lights running parallel to the rails, and I like the textured pattern on the skin of the train. I'm assuming that's what that is.
yeah.
I might crop it in just a little. I mean, it depends. The on the train, I'm just trying to decide right as I'm saying it whether I like the little bit of the logo and the circle from the front light that's not lit, because I think it might even be stronger, more value, to use Teddy's word, if I didn't see that on that facade.
This part here.
Yeah.
You could either crop it or that wouldn't be hard to clone that out. I'm also wondering about the aspect. Like, I think you sort of have a motion move going from left to right. Yeah, I don't know how a 16 by 9 horizontal would work with this.
Yeah, but in the series, everything I need to be the same, I think.
Mm.
Oh yeah, there you go. Good point.
There's a change in tonality right at the very bottom. Like there's like it's almost a right about where the front of the train starts, you can see a lighter line that kind of runs all the way across.
Yeah,
to the right. Do you see that? I'm not sure if that's processing or if that's just the light, or it looks like it's processing.
yeah. And also that's the concept of edge flicker, where contrasting objects close to the edge are going to draw the eye, be more likely to draw the eye. I would
Yeah.
also say that bright section to the very on the left side that bleeds out of frame, right?
Yes.
No, not that farther than that. Right there on the edge.
Yeah.
Right. One more, that right there. That cloned out. I mean, it doesn't mean much, but I think if you were to
Yeah, it
clone that out,
helps.
that
Yeah.
would help concentrate more in with the photo as opposed to something bleeding out.
I go back and forth on that one, Teddy, because the other thing that that does is it establishes that as a column with space on the other side of it. And sometimes I find that retaining something that gives you a spatial clue to what's going on outside of the frame is helpful. But I do take your point, it draws my eye. I'm more there was another section that's bright that I like, I don't know, between the man's legs, like right under the leg that's extended, his knee. If you could, I don't know if the highlights are too hot there, but if you could pull that back just a little bit, I think it would be beneficial because you've got nice texture on the concrete, and then it kind of I can't tell if the highlights are blown, like right in that concrete section. Totally unhelpful for me pointing at my screen, but you're in the right area. So right under his knee on that leg that's extended, right there. Yeah, because there is detail there, but it's pretty hot.
Yeah, maybe lower the light a little bit.
Since it's a silhouette, you could probably just burn it in a little without having to select the legs.
Yeah. I like the highlights right on the edge of the front of the train too. They're everything else is pretty straight, and then you have these little wavy reflections right on the corner when it swoops around to the front.
Oh, here, this part.
No, up right there, right where your mouse is. Yeah, right in there. Like those highlights
Yeah,
are quite lovely actually.
the great texture.
Yeah. And they provide a contour that's not evident anywhere else with the highlights.
Yeah. And then I have this one.
I like your silhouettes.
I like the upside down, the bicycle there.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
And that whole ceiling with those shapes is pretty fascinating. I'd want to see a little bit more of those treads because I know I can see some white dots on them. I don't know if you could lift those shadows at all, but it would give a nice echo to the top ones. Because you have the open section on the bottom left, but there's the treads have some patterns on them as well.
Mhm.
To the right of where you are right now, right near the man where the man's walking. Yeah, those ones.
I would be tempted to at least take a look at what this would be if you flipped it upside down
Mhm.
because there are conflicting orientation cues. I think that's probably going to be too much, but it might be worth a look.
And even before flipping it, you've got some really like you've got reflective surfaces giving you ways to play with the light. So like you've got the Brund sign that's kind of bounced up in
Mhm.
reflection, and then right behind the man is that column a mirror or mirrored?
Yeah,
Because
I
again, you
think
got
so.
highlights in there that are buried that could be lifted light slightly that would give some reflection to onto the scene that he's walking past.
Did you say you're not allowed to photograph there?
No, it's not allowed.
So you didn't read the sign?
No, I cannot read. I communicate with my camera. I don't know about reading.
Yeah, yeah. Just use the Jesuit principle. Ask for forgiveness. I really like those. It's an interesting series.
Yeah.
So now I have to make five of it. Huh?
Yeah.
And here I have some other reserves as well. This one, you've seen this one?
Yeah, yeah. You had that up a few weeks back.
Yeah. This one, I'm not sure about it.
That's an interesting space.
Here is a bit too much light.
I think you could, if you wanted to, you could mask the window on the right and get release it, and then have another layer and reprocess so that the exterior is darker,
Yeah.
and then just let that darker window itself bleed through with leaving the rest of the room alone.
Mhm.
But I mean, this is a really lovely challenge in terms of the composition because I can see why you framed it how you have with that bottom left element and the
Yeah,
shelves on the top and that, that beam across. Like it really, like, I think you have to leave the geometry the way it is because it's actually, it gives a real sense of presence to the overall corner. I'd love to see it a little bit brighter in the, like, especially that old workbench because there's that yellow or that natural wood and then the blue. There's some interesting colors here, but that maybe this is perhaps the light that you saw. But I'd love to see it with a little bit more light on the interior.
yeah, yeah. You're really. I've noticed an improvement in particularly your compositions since since I've been seeing your photos.
Mhm.
So you can tell you're getting better, man.
Yeah, I hope so. Let me see this one very well.
The bench and the tree on the bottom left looks interesting. That one.
This one.
Just
Yeah,
just at that lower vector. Yeah, yeah, that's gorgeous.
almost looks like an infrared shot.
It does. And I
Yeah,
like
but
the little bit of the teacup is spilled there.
I took the other one because of the tree is asking too much attention. Maybe I have to make the tree more dark.
Mm.
It'd be interesting. So you adjusted this. So this was a color shot that you processed into black and white.
No, no, I just make this in black and white
But is it with a color camera?
with a color camera. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you might want to experiment with is playing around a little bit with the mixture of the channels. Because that will give you some pretty subtle ways to change how that tree is interacting.
Yeah,
So
use affinity, right? So that might be you, because I know exactly what you're talking about, Jeff, with the black and white mixer.
yeah, you can mix on the red, green, or blue channel,
I'll
and
bet
and
affinity
so
would do that too.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because that I'm not sure was that a yellow tree with leaves or were they green?
Was green.
Okay, so yeah, I would play around with your color channels a bit into your black and white processing.
Well, here we are at 3:05. So I'm planning on doing this again next week. I don't think I'll be gone on until January. I'm going to be in Norway
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
for the Northern Lights. So I don't think I'm going to be able to see anything but night photos the whole time. So
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes.
Next week I'm here, but the week after I'm going to Spain again for
Oh,
three
good.
weeks. For 3 weeks.
And that's where
So,
your wife's from Spain? Is that right?
sorry?
Did you say your wife is from Spain?
No, my mother-in-law.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
She she moved from Cuba to Spain, so she is living there. So
So I should be available next week,
maybe
and then not the week after.
so maybe I am there in the vacation. I don't know exactly how it's going, but if I have time, I connect.
Yeah. If you would to send me the raw image of the one with the workbench and the colored window, the colored reflection.
Yeah, that's good.
I like to play around with that.
Okay. You want the whole photo because I made a part of it.
Oh yeah, the whole photo.
Yeah.
Just the raw image.
You can include the elephant that was standing beside the bench that you cropped out.
Now I know a photographer who makes photos with animals and in office buildings or in
Oh yeah,
chairs.
that'd be fun.
Well, it was
So
nice talking today.
Okay,
Thank you.
guys. Great,
See
yeah,
you
great
later.
talking to
We'll,
you
we'll have
too.
to see your pictures next week, Teddy.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, I will. You will. I will. You will. We will. Okay. See you guys. Bye.
Have a lot of fun.
Bye bye.
Ciao.